Welcome to the Panza Panza Forum. In the Yoruba language, the word panza is usually injected into poetry to express an uncomfortable, uncensored, and inconvenient truth. The Panza Panza Forum is candid conversations about the life of African immigrants in America as it relates to their adaptation to their new home. While some may find it easy to integrate and can balance between retaining the original African culture while accepting the culture of their new home, many continue to struggle to find a balance between both worlds.
Hello and welcome to Panza Panza Live. This is a podcast where we discuss the lives of African immigrants and their assimilation into Western society as they raise younger generations in a country that is quite different from their own. We also explore the experiences of children of immigrants as they balance the African and Western cultures. We present to you this informative, interesting, and expansive dialogue about the intricate experiences of African immigrants in America.
Welcome to Panza Panza Podcast, where we explore stories and experiences that shape us. I'm your host, Kemi Seriki, and today we're privileged to be joined by Dr. Otito Iwuchukwu, brilliant organizational psychologist, an author, science educator who is on a mission to write books that help people connect with themselves, with others, and the world around them through storytelling. Dr. Iwuchukwu is an author of a timely and deeply reflective book, The Belonging Paradox, where she brings a fresh perspective to belonging, using a story based on lenses to frame our very human need for belonging. In a liminal space, I had to look that up because I didn't know the meaning of it. So those life space where we stand on threshold between wanting to belong and yet not belonging. In this conversation, we're going to explore migration, identity, race, belonging, finding purpose in science, navigating identity in a mostly white professional space, and what it means to belong in our family, our career, and our community as well. So welcome to Panza Panza, Dr. Iwuchukwu. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Seriki. I know this has been almost a year, right, of us trying to work this out. I'm so happy that I'm here. Thank you for inviting me.
So, as I usually do with my guests, especially for us immigrants, we have to talk about our story of the reason for our migration and as well as our experience, because I know we want to dive into a very important conversation, but for people to understand what is immigrant experience. So I want to go back to your family. Back home, can you share a bit about your family background? And what was life like growing up in Nigeria?
So I come from the southeast of Nigeria, so I'm Igbo, for people who are kind of familiar with the Nigerian geographical regions. So I'm Igbo, and I'm the youngest of four. My mom was, I say, kindergarten teacher for 35 years. So I think teaching is kind of in the genes. And then my dad worked for the airport management space agency. I went to a boarding school in not the southeast, let me say the mid south, mid-east, what do you call south, right? In Nigeria. And then I went to college in southwest Nigeria. So almost like I've been to many parts of Nigeria. I'm not a person, and that came from my dad. We're not a people who were localized. And by localized, I mean born in one place, schooled in one place, all of that. No, my father moved around a lot. We moved with him. So when he came to go to school, we were not afraid. Like we went to boarding schools. And I mean, I even say I kind of was close to home, even though it was over 300 kilometers, because my brother and sister went like to the northeast of Nigeria, which is almost 700 kilometers away from home as 10, 11-year-olds, right? So we're migrants even in Nigeria, I think is what I'm trying to say. And then after college, went again to northeast Nigeria to do my mandatory 1-year military experience, paramilitary, I call it paramilitary experience. And then worked for about 2 years in Nigeria before I came here to do my PhD. So I came to the US for a PhD program.
Wow, that's really inspiring. I know you said you came to United States to do your PhD, especially at the present stage of many immigrant stories. Many people may not understand why are these people coming to this country. why can't you do that PhD in your country? So what
Mhm.
actually motivates you to see that United States is a place for you to come instead of going to places like England or France or any other place?
It's community, right? My brother and my sister were already here. So my sister won the diversity visa lottery when Nigeria was still one of the member countries represented. So I felt like I had a place that I could go. And I had a lot of, uncles and aunties here at the time. So I knew I wouldn't be coming to a place where I wouldn't have some sort of landing, right? In that sense, as opposed to the UK where we have virtually nobody, like nobody in my family is in the United Kingdom at all. And how did my aunties and uncles come here? It was through another older uncle who went to Howard in the 50s and kind of, applied for all his brothers and sisters to come here. So it's that communal thing, right? Like you see something that is good and you want your community to be a part of it. And so seeing uncles and aunties here, you already had a vision because they will come back every year, December or Easter, come back, things you had read in books, the quality of the education. So when it was time and I kept thinking about wanting to do graduate studies, obviously the US became like, you know what I mean, the default, I would say, to think about. But then speaking about migration, right? It wasn't easy peasy. It took 3 years of applying to different schools, getting all these rejections before I finally got admitted to Temple University. So it wasn't as though I just came and hopped on a plane and started graduate school.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, so there was some time element to that of all the applications, just like people here will be rejected too. You were also, I don't like to use the word rejected, but you weren't given admission, right? In that sense. So it was a 3-year sojourn to kind of get a school that would take me in to do graduate studies.
And I'm glad you explain all this because,
Yeah.
like I said before, many people do not understand the purpose of why
Yep.
people migrate. And they think by you jumping in, oh, they're taking space, they
Yeah.
occupying
Yep.
what's
Yeah.
supposed to be. But this is a country of immigrant anyway,
Yeah.
you
Yep.
know. So, what was it like as a last born? What was it like emotionally to leave your family behind back home? Your mom, your dad?
Mm-hmm. So I think that's why I first gave the background of saying we were migrants in our country already. So this was something that I think my parents were already used to. The only difference now was the Atlantic Ocean was going to be separating us, right? I went to boarding school when I was 11 years old, and that was it. From boarding school, then it was university. So I'd been apart from my parents, what I mean, like
Uh-huh.
segmented apartness for quite a while. So they were not, obviously they were very happy for me. And I think the fundamental difference with my parents is they knew that I was a home girl. And what do I mean by that? I don't think the longest time I've been without going to Nigeria for a season was COVID, right? I tried to go home 2, 3 years just to kind of still touch my roots, I say, right? Go home and touch my roots. That's how I put it. So I try to go home. I'm a at heart, let me put it that way. So, and then obviously our parents came here because we also filed for them. So we now are first generation, as it were, and they are, what would I say, second generation, right? It was kind of the other way around, which happens for many families. So they too, they came here, they lived here, and then they'll go back every once in a while. So I wasn't apart from them for that long, I would say. No.
Well, it's good that you are able to connect, especially when you have family back home, like you
Mm-hmm.
and your parents. It's good to
Yeah.
connect. And you
Yes.
could always take whatever your culture everywhere you go
Yes.
with you. Also plant it right there to
Yeah.
continue to grow, which
Yep.
for the children that you have.
Yes.
So when you came to United States, do you know what you expect when you
Mm.
arrive? Was there a period of cultural shock or uncertainty or something?
No, so it's interesting. I think that's a what's the word? I think it's almost like a given, right? Like you're coming to a strange land. I say this at the beginning, it's a strange land. Then we get used to it. And so for me, I think it was I don't want to use the wrong word, but almost like the very business-like nature of things. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to talk to people and they're like, no, this is how it's done. They're not even hearing you, right? That kind of thing. And it turns out you are right. And so you are even like, is it my accent that is making you not understand what I'm saying or what? Like, what is going on here? And also because I guess I'm educated, right? I use that as a point because when I first got to graduate school, I don't tell this story often, but what had happened was, you have to pay taxes. You have to pay taxes. This is what people don't understand. So, but you're paying it as a resident alien, right? That's kind of how it's put. So now At the time, the woman at the International Student Office, I don't know who made this mistake because the mistake came from them, had put it such that Nigeria had a tax treaty with the United States. And I remember going to them and I said, Nigeria does not have a tax treaty. I don't know who put this thing here. She's like, oh no, they do, whatever. Like, I kept going. And this was the most frustrating thing I tell people. And I said, I've been used to advocating for myself. I went back to the office 3 times. I said, I don't know what is going on. They're supposed to take taxes from this, stipend, because it was a tax stipend. It was about $1,000 for people who think that you come to graduate school and you're making money. It was about $1,000. That was your graduate stipend at the time for being a research assistant. And so I kept saying, they're not taking taxes from this. They need to. They ought to. She was like, no, don't worry about it, blah, blah, blah. But the wisdom I had was to say, you know what? I'm going to calculate the taxes based on this resident alien form and I'm going to put it away. Let me tell you, by the 6th month, $0 came into the accounts. $0 came into my direct checking. And I went to her and I said, what happened? She said, oh, we took all the back taxes. And I'm like, what? She said, yes, and we're going to keep taking it until we first take it. I said, were you not the one that I said to you that Nigeria does not have a tax treaty? Oh, it was a mistake. And I was like, wow. I remember I cried because I said, look, I knew I was right all this while, right? And I feel like you get instances of that still happening, So I had to go without pay for about a month and a half. And I was like, thank goodness I had put aside whatever the tax was. And here I am, I'm living in an apartment, remember? So I would have not been able to make rent or whatever. That was an eye-opening experience, I'm telling you, when I first came. So since then, I said, no matter what someone tells me, I have to verify for myself. I'm telling you.
Yeah, and it's so true what you said, because someone like that who has been working there for a while, I believe, before you even came, should have known that
Yep.
this is the part of the procedure. And if you are not sure of it, it's for you to ask other
Ask.
people
Yep.
who are
Yeah.
working there and say, what is the procedure of this situation, so that I won't put this student in a jeopardy. And if you have been an American person that happens to, they will take it all the way to the management.
Yep, they will. I mean, obviously, I guess maybe they didn't have enough Nigerian graduate students at the time because this was when the university was still trying to, build up. So I really think that's what it was. And you just code everything the same. I cannot say, but I was like, at least some apology would have been in order. You know what I mean? I'm not just saying, oh, it was a mistake. This is a mistake it has a lot of consequences, right, on the person. So I was like, thank God I was able to read, right? And I could read through the thing, look at the countries and calculate the taxes for myself because they took all those darn taxes. They took it back.
So what was it like for you
Mhm,
adjusting to a new country socially,
mhm.
emotionally, and
Yeah,
culturally?
yeah. So in terms of social, when I first came, I mean, obviously I'm a Christian woman, so I kind of try to find church. I found an African American church close to home. And even that's the thing, I talk about this in my book, that even though all these people look like me, I didn't understand them at all. I did not understand what they were saying. I'm not even kidding. And it was like the cognitive dissonance was too much for me. Like, how am I in this place where I'm surrounded by people who kind of look like me, but I'm still feeling like so much of an outsider? So by then, I had heard of a Nigerian church in town in Walnut Street in Philadelphia at the time. And I remember going in there and it felt like home. It felt like you could hear all the languages. It felt very comforting. I don't know. That's the word I would use. And so I attended that church all the time I was at Temple until I left Philadelphia. So there's that. I understand now when people say somewhere feels like home because that's kind of what that church did for me. I still have so many friends from there. Thankfully for me, I had a friend who had relocated before me, was also in graduate school, reading almost the same program, but in a different school. So we kind of get together in church and we just fast friends from that time. So I had people, I'll put it that way. We're going to talk about this quite a bit to say people, right? People become the essence of your personhood. I could go to New York every month and kind of spend the weekend with my sister. So it wasn't too bad. I didn't come into a place where I was the only one, right? I wasn't the first person to come in my family. So I think that really helped a lot. But still, there was still that feeling of, oh, you have to wait in the snow for the bus. There were some experiences that were very frigid, I'll put it that way. That snow and the public transportation in the first 2 years before I was able to get a car on the graduate stipend, right? A completely used Mitsubishi Galant. until then, I remember every winter was miserable because I had to wait in the snow all the time, right? For in the cold all the time for the buses. And it's not like now when you can look at the thing and they'll tell you a bus is coming in
What's
5 minutes. Then you had no idea. You just go at least 10 minutes before the time. Sometimes the bus will break down. You're there for an hour plus. Nobody's telling you anything. You have to call the SEPTA, the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority. And then they're saying, oh, well, the bus broke down. And you're just like, oh my God. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
Those were the first years. They were cold.
wow,
Put it that way.
wow, wow. And you've learned since then anyway. Yeah, so let's talk about your professional path as a
Mhm.
pharmacist scientist and associate professor with a strong focus on
Genomics.
genomics. Is
Yeah,
something that I'm just learning.
yeah, yeah.
Pharmacogenomics. You discover this area of studies and you decide to specialize in this field.
Okay. First of all, I'm now a full professor. I have to say that. I'm no longer an associate professor. Thankfully, genomics, it was from graduate school. So pharmacogenomics is the study of how our genetics affect our response to drugs. And this is a personal story because in my family, we don't take Bactrim at all. Like Bactrim causes a severe allergic reaction for us. And this is just across from my mom to me, my sister, my nephew. So I kind of knew this just familiarly, but I never tied it to genetics. I just was like, I don't take Bactrim, he doesn't take, because my sister can take it, right? So it's not everybody. But then I remember in graduate school, that was when they had just cloned the human genome, right? What they say, deciphered the human genome. This shows you how long ago I was in graduate school. This was 2003 and I had just come to grad school. So the science was new. They were still trying to read it out and explain and all that. So I remember one day I was in a course and the man said, oh, that this can explain why people have different reactions to drugs, things that we didn't know before. We used to call them idiosyncratic, which means we didn't know what caused them. But now we're starting to find out that there's a genetic influence. My ears just went up. I'm like, really? You mean there's a genetic influence to, this whole thing? And I'm like, it makes sense, right? When you think about the fact that my mother could not take it, me and one of my sisters could not take it, one of my nephews now cannot take it. But I didn't tie it together at all at the time. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. So then I went in to that class, continued taking it, and it just piqued my interest from there. So I kind of knew that's what I was going to do. Just this science of discovery, right? What are the ways that our genes impact the way that we respond, that unique, DNA fingerprint that we all have. And I always say this kind of still ties back to what I do in organizational psychology, right? Like, why do people respond differently to different work situations? What are the different things that motivate people at work? How do you bring a salary? One person is motivated, one person is not, right? So this kind of need level is almost like it's intrinsically set for different people. So that's also what's almost like influenced me to also go into that field from a psychological point of view to say, when it comes to work experiences and all this and stuff about work, why are some people much affected and others are not? What are the things? And yeah.
So in terms of the medicine in itself,
Mhm.
because I want you to explain in an everyday word,
Yeah.
an average listener. So in terms of if you being
Mhm.
prescribed certain medication, you check whether those medication
Will
can
work for
work
you or
with
not.
your
Yeah. Mhm.
system
Yes.
compared to somebody else.
Yes, exactly. So all this, I mean, 23 and Me, that company has now gone under, it's gone bankrupt, but they were the ones that started that whole marketing thing, right? Like now, Ancestry and Me, people go to find out where their ancestors are. You can do the same kind of genetic test to find out if a drug will work for you or not. And that really helps because ordinarily before, people would keep taking drugs and they say, it's not working. I think it's working. I think I had a reaction. You're doing this trial and error. But for some drugs now and some genes, you can do the test where you know already that you should not be taking this drug. You know if you take this drug, it will not work for you. Or you know if you take this drug, you might have, let me not say you will have, you might have an adverse event or an adverse reaction. So it really helps from the perspective of what you call preventive medicine, right? You're helping make sure that people get the right drugs for them at the right time in that sense. So that's what genomics is. It's also part of precision medicine, which means you are giving the individual what they need based on their genes.
Based your experience so far, have you seen many people going through this test?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Many hospitals do it. So you can actually ask your physician that you want to get a genetic test. And for many, many people, you don't even have to get a prescription, you can actually go to the companies that do it and request. 23andMe used to be the one that was most commercial. Most other genetic testing companies, you do need something from your prescriber saying, recommending a genetic test. Yeah.
So let me ask you,
Mhm.
many people may see your area of specialty as uncommon
Uh-huh.
path
Yeah.
for students from your background or your gender. Do you
Mhm.
feel that you are one of the few pioneer in some way in this field?
No, I don't think so. Genomics has been around for a long time, right? I think I just came upon it when I wanted to, and it was new at the time. So it's kind of like, like I said, they had just finished mapping out the human genome less than 2 years before I came into grad school, right? So there are people who have been working in this space for a long time, Nigerians, but they're working in different areas. I'm just the one who came in and said, it's pharmacogenomics I want to do. So come more on drugs itself. There are people who have been working on cellular responses, what you call epigenetics, which is the environmental effect, right, on our genes. So there are people who have been working in many areas of precision medicine. What happened was that human genome that they mapped in 2003 just exploded the science. That's what I would say. But it's been around.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the reason why I asked, coming
Yeah.
from Nigeria as a,
Yeah.
woman of color,
Yeah. Yeah.
in terms of how many people did you see
Yes. No, not
while
many.
you
That's
were
what you
there?
mean. No, not many.
Uh-huh.
Not many at all. In fact, I remember in graduate school, I was saying, I don't think this person teaching us has even seen Black people before. He was just the weirdest professor, like very cold, very unfriendly. But I was like, look, if this is what I want to do, you're not going to stop me, right? If I greet you every day in class, you don't answer me, it doesn't still stop me from being in this class and learning what I need to learn from it. You're just a messenger. And this is something I try to tell the kids now or the younger ones that I'm teaching now to say, in as much as you can say anything about the professor, the responsibility is still on you for the learning, right? You have to take responsibility for your learning, right? I could have said, oh, this professor is racist, is this, is that. And then I stop coming for class. Who's that going to, as we say in Nigeria, who that one help? It'll be me who will be on the disadvantage, right? Because I'm trying to get my degree, I'm trying to get this course, I'm trying to go specialize in this thing. And this man is my portal. So I'm just going to ignore him and his, nonsensical behaviors and just continue doing what I'm doing, which is to get my degree. Yeah.
Because for what you just said now, it is so important and it's so
Hmm.
profound.
Yeah.
Because for sometimes when I get into the conversation that as immigrant, even
Hmm.
though we may understand issue of race and discrimination, but
Hmm.
it's not the point of our way of saying, you know what, I'm gonna give up these things because of what I face. We're being taught that, I mean, it's not being taught, it's part of our culture that, you know what, whatever, I'm here to focus on my goal. Whatever attitude you want to show me does
That's
not
on
mean
you.
anything. That's on you. I don't need to pay you attention to that. Just give me what I'm here
What
for.
I'm here for. Yeah.
And sometimes I've get into those kind of conversation where some people who, even some of our children who were born here or grew up
Hmm.
in this country or African American may tell you, oh, because you don't have that heritage of ancestry,
Hmm.
Black heritage, where
Hmm. Hmm.
you are not from generational, you
Yeah,
know,
trauma.
where
I understand that, oh, Mrs. Eriki. I understand, what they're saying at the same time, because I've experienced like blatant racism, blatant discrimination. But like you said, I think there's just something in us that just is like, what? I have a goal, I have a purpose, and I'm going to try and make it. Now, the difference is that that goal was kind of dependent on me, right? Like I was the one who came in to do graduate studies. This professor, he would have had to work very hard to fail me. You know what I mean by that? And he
Mhm.
was not my supervisor. He was not my PhD supervisor. So he didn't really have direct impact, right, on my trajectory. So that's the difference. There comes a situation sometimes when that is not the case. Now you're working against somebody in the system who really sets out to bring you down, right? Or to do things that would directly impact your trajectory. And they're empowered to do this by the system, right? So these are two different, I would say, scenarios. And I'm always mindful of them. You know what I mean? And that's why I say to people, like, if you were to give me money versus autonomy, I'll probably go with autonomy first because the autonomy will allow me to get to a place where I can make money. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
But many times, if people go for the money and now you are now in this almost like oppressive situation, it's really tough. It's really tough because then you are like, I need the money, and I'm in this like tough situation and I don't know what to do about it, right? I would rather my freedom any day because then I can then think and make money, right? That's kind of the way I envision it. So I think that has also driven, I would say, my career choices in a sense and all that because I see the things that go on and I refer to it as foolishness and I'm being very deliberate about it because it's just like you see somebody in the elevator. It's just the two of you. The person greets you good morning. You completely pretend like they're not there. It's like, what? So because normally if it's there 5 people, you can say, oh, I didn't hear you. But this happens every single time. You see this person in the elevator, you see them in the hallway, you greet them, they just, you're like, what's going on? After some time, you're like, you know what? I don't have to greet you.
That's right.
Simple and short, and I move on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. You're not gonna let that disturb you from,
Yes,
doing what
exactly.
you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
also stigmatize everybody else that comes to your way
Yeah,
and generalize that view on
yeah,
the
yeah.
rest of the people.
Yeah. So I said you may have, again, it's the human brain, right? Just a shortcut, something that is heuristic to say, people from behave like this, right? General. You can do that. But I say you cannot paint that broad brush stroke on everyone, right? In that sense. Because if I were to look at my career now as an example, the people who have been the most helpful to me just in advocating for me and just giving me good advice, right? When I needed it were white men, right? I always don't say that is a thing. If I were to come back and say the people who have been the most detrimental and been in my way have been women, I could say that. You know what I mean? But it's just I don't say that. I say it's you. As in I point to the person and I point to that person and I say, you are the person that did me this thing, right? Now I can say, maybe people from your country can behave like this, but I haven't met that many people from your country. But you and I, right? I have to talk to you and say, this person is the person that I can point to and say they're the enemy of progress here, right?
In order for you to think, because I'm so impressed by your thinking, your approach to your career, the much more intellectual and wisdom attached to it as well. So, who would you say is your mentors or role model in
Mm-hmm.
this field? Or
Mm-hmm.
did you have to carve your way, your own blueprints?
Well, so I had to a little bit, but I would say too, when I got into graduate school, this same thing of kind of advocating for yourself, and I knew that I wanted to, go into this field. I started to look for a second advisor, graduate advisor, and it was a really young woman at the time, right? She maybe just a few years ahead of me in that sense, but she was just starting out her own lab and all that. And she was one of the people because she was very focused. She knew what she wanted. She came in, she was working at it. She's of East Asian origin, right? So working at it and doing her thing. And she led, I would say, like a boss, right? Because even though there were a lot of people from our country in the program, she didn't show any favoritism. And until tomorrow, I admire that about her. She wasn't like, chatting and doing all these things. It's like, no, we're here for the job. Once we're done for the job, we'll go for happy hour, we'll do this. She was very methodical about the way she did things. And I appreciated that. And I say to people now that I come into the era of workplace fairness and belonging and all that, those are the things you do that people don't have to question their belonging, right? If I were, so for instance, I'm the only one from Nigeria in your lab, and then every day I see you with the people from your country chatting and laughing in your language, that's exclusion, right? In as much as you're saying, I didn't mean to exclude you, just by that, you've created a barrier, right? So she was very intentional. We do not speak vernacular in this place. We speak English, little things. And she didn't make it a big deal. It was just, these are the rules of the lab. And that was it. So you knew if you were in this lab, you were here to work. And then after working, you go and play.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she was one of them. And then coming from Nigeria, my own undergraduate advisor, uh, people may know her, Dr. Babalola. She
Okay.
was also somebody that I looked up to. Academia kind of influenced me, I would say, to get into this space because I was her first, I guess, the first or second undergraduate student at the time in terms of undergraduate thesis, what you call honor students now. So people like that, I've met quite people that what I mean, like looking at them, I'm like, this is the kind of person I would like to be if I were leading a lab. Obviously, I'm not leading a lab, right? But I learned so much from her, and I talked about it in my book to say it's good to take the good, right, as well as whatever else you are taking, right?
So I want to navigate this white space and professional
Mhm,
identity more with you
mhm.
because for
Okay.
many who may be listening,
Yes.
this can serve as an example for them.
Mhm,
So, as
mhm,
an African immigrant and a woman of color, what is it like
mhm.
entering this space?
Interesting. That's the word I would say. I'll use the word interesting because obviously, again, no offense to anyone, but you find that many, many times you are what they call an only. And this started from graduate school. Like you go to these research conferences, huge research conferences. I mean, it's not like now where I do think that a lot of Nigerians have come into the research space and all that. You are in these huge rooms presenting posters and all that, and you're just alone. Let me put it that way, alone. Right? People are passing by like you're not there. They'll pass your poster. They'll go talk to the person next to you, do that, do that. So I remember a girlfriend she left, she left the whole industry. And she said, I don't know how you do this year after year. Like it's killing me. I said, girl, I just go up there and I hold my head up high. It's 1 hour, right, of standing there. At the end of the hour, I go back home. You know what I mean? Like,
And that's a Nigerian thing.
yep. I said, it's an hour. I just look at it, it's an hour. Stand there, I mean, it's not like now where you had all these fancy phones. I always say, you just stand there, maybe make conversation with the people around you if need be. At the end of the hour, roll up your poster and you go home. She's like, she could not do it. It's just so. But I understood what she was saying because it feels like, am I invisible? That's literally the way it feels. And I always say, I'm not invisible. I'm 5 feet 10 inches. So that is not an invisible frame, if you know what I mean. Right. So that's when I said I understand it when you were talking earlier. That's what I mean. Like some of these things are systemic. It's like they don't expect to see someone like you there. So they're just probably gonna walk past like they didn't see you, right? It's very, very rare that someone will just approach you at a conference and just be chatting. It's rare. I'm telling you, like it's not even a thing. And that's why I have to use this question of height because I am not a small person by any chance. I stand tall above heads in the room, but still, people will just walk past you like you don't exist. But like I said, remember the professor I talked about in school already taught me how you can see people, look at them, they will not greet you. So I was used to that from school of home. Going to all these conferences, like another round of all of this. But I can see how year after year of doing that, right? It gets tiring. It gets tiring. So now I'll tell you, poster presentations are not my favorite of anything. I don't, if I can avoid it, I avoid it. I'm just like, whatever. Obviously, publications, nobody's going to be asking you any questions. If your science is good, you get published, your publication is out in the market. So that part of it was my least favorite, I would say, of my career. But then now coming into work, right? You come into the spaces, people say, oh, you're welcome. You're so articulate. Oh my God. That kind of all of those things. And when you start to work and you start to just be yourself, right? Maybe they say, oh, we're doing this whole thing. And you're like, oh, have you considered X? Have you considered Y? Or is there a reason why we're doing it this way? Again, what you think would be camaraderie kind of conversation with colleagues, people take it so personally. And then you start to see that shift once once the realization comes that this person can hold their own, right? They can hold their own. That's what I use the word. You start to see different, I would say, different behavior types crop up. So it's just something that I've kind of gotten used to over the years. But I always say that what it is, it's when you think about intergroup relations, is that a person like you is not meant to be here, right? That's kind of the idea. And so the persons in the dominant group, as this is, they start to act in a way that they don't even know they're doing this. They're just doing it because of your presence in the place. I tell people you have to understand this. So now when you look around and say, like, let me go back again to that professor. See, I'm not a person who doesn't greet people. I was not raised that way. I don't raise my children that way. I think if you see people in the morning, you want to say hello, right? However, after years, and I mean years of seeing a person, greeting them, they're not responding to you. Guess what? I became a person who doesn't greet this particular person, right? So My response was in my not greeting them was in response to them not greeting me for all these years. I'm in their class, I see them in the hallway, I see nothing, right?
Mhm.
But now that person may go now and say I'm not friendly, right? You see what I'm saying? But not recognizing that my just keeping to myself was because of the behavior you projected towards me. So this is a thing that happens. I've seen it consistently. And so now I'm just like, that's on you. This is my mantra. Like, that is on you, not on me anymore. Yeah.
And for you to become a full-time professor now, that didn't stop you. I'm sorry to say associate professor. And you corrected me that no, I'm now a full-time professor with all these challenges that you
Mm-hmm.
went through.
Mm-hmm.
And you were able to respond to those barriers. And, you were able to focus on your purpose, which
Mm-hmm.
is the most important aspect of all these things, which I want people to take from there. Coming from Nigeria, where race may not have been a central issue, how did you come to understand and navigate racial dynamics in USA?
Yeah. So I tell people, and I've written on this before, right? We Nigerians, we say race doesn't play a card, but I come from the perspective of, I'd say it again, intergroup relations. Nigeria has a tribalism issue.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're aware of this. There's no difference between tribalism and racism
Mhm.
because it's a group dynamic thing. It's a
Mhm.
group thing. It's like my group is better than your group. My group is different from your group in this way and that way. So I tell people, I'm like, this is nothing. We came from Nigeria, right? I mean, you and I are Igbo and Yoruba, but I'm sure you are very well aware of this, that there's always that simmering thing, right, between these two
Mhm.
tribes that
Mhm.
came from the Civil War. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
That parents have taken this thing down. Our parents tried. I have to say, they did not, stop us from going to school in the Southwest or anything,
Mhm.
but you can tell that they still carry the weight of what they might have considered betrayal or whatever. I don't know what happened in 1960s. I wasn't born then. I cannot take the weight of that, right, for
Mhm.
that generation. But I'm not unaware of it. That's what I kept telling you at that beginning. That I get it when people say we're not part of the generational trauma and all that. And trauma can be passed down
Yeah.
generationally. So I'm very aware of that. So I say, if you've been in Nigeria and you've either from your parents, right, you've seen your parents experience the detrimental effects of tribalism, right? I just look at racism as the same thing. And that's why I say it's on you. That's why
Mhm.
I always say it's on you, right? I cannot be what's the word? Like, I cannot be the victim of your racist behaviors and still feel guilty. I don't know if you understand what I mean. Like,
Yes, of
no,
course.
not going to do that. You know what I mean? So that's to me is the thing. Like, I'm going to live my life and I'm going to live it well. But that's why I say one has to distinguish the outcomes that you are responsible for, which was me. I came to get my degree versus the things that they think they can do to you. There are people who will be your supervisors who will try to run you out of the lab with behaviors. That happens. I didn't have that. Thankfully, my own primary advisor or
Mhm.
secondary advisor was an immigrant herself, right? So there was that point of connection that we're both here as women to
Mhm.
do things. We're not here to play. Right?
Mhm.
In that sense, we're here for purpose. So there was that perspective. But I'm not unaware of people who have had to leave labs because of racist behaviors. Yes, this happened in the same institution that I was in as well. So you see these things. And that's what I try to say, I can agree on a thing that is happening and say, okay, this is the consequence, right? But I can also agree that this good thing is happening here. I can look at both things and say these two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what is said is so important because it's intergroup thing. Okay,
Yes.
one group to
Yes.
the other.
Another.
Sometimes when African tend to explain things in this aspect, many African American might find it offensive
Yeah.
that you are
Yeah.
not looking at color of the skin
Yeah.
to
It's group.
understand because sometimes even within the same group of the people of the same color
Yes.
could also do you in.
Do you eat? Yes, exactly.
Uh-huh.
In
And
that case, there's another grouping, even with people of the
yes,
same color. That
yes,
grouping could be due to economic status. It could be
yes.
due to township. It could be due to anything. So it's a grouping effect.
Even in Nigeria, I believe
Yes.
among Igbos, even among the Yoruba, you have different groups.
Exactly. Some people will say, "Oh, Ijebu." It's the same.
It is, and there's a stereotype. Oh, you know how the Abeokuta, this is how they behave. And they're all Yoruba. You know how the people from Badagry they behave. They will even say the Ijebu people, they are not civilized compared to the ones from Lagos.
Yeah.
Say people from Ibadan, they act like, they are from rural place whereby they have no civil. So, and they use that to identify them. So it's for you to understand each group is within group is also divided among each other.
Yeah.
So we can't say just because, all white people are like this or all black people are like this. It's very important that you brought that out. And there's often the claim that race block opportunity. What's your perspective at someone who has succeeded in your field?
Yeah. I mean, it came at great personal cost, I have to say. Again, I'm not going to, if you read my book, you see the story there. And it's still continuing, you know what I mean? Because a person who is determined to be racist and bad, they will be. Like I don't know that you can change them, right? You just have to take your own, like we're talking about, purpose and perspective and goals in that sense. So many times you just want to extricate yourself from the situation. But, the thing, and I started by saying autonomy versus money. So you see at least academia in its heydays and the way it was conceived with this autonomy that you come in, you work hard, right? You have a 6-year probationary period really at which they could say, no, you're not good enough. They can say that, right? So after the 6 years, then, for schools that offer tenure, then you're tenured. Now, when you're tenured, you can now kind of start working on the things that are interesting to you. You're still teaching. That's how this whole work on belonging and organizational psychology came in for me. You start to work on things that are interesting to you from an academic perspective. So you do all those things, you're still teaching. So you have a little bit of autonomy there, right? Because no one can tell you what to study. They can't tell you what to do in that sense. That's different from when you have a direct manager at work, 9 to 5, who will be breathing over your neck, who can say, hey, your performance evaluation this year is 0, even if you scored a 5. Somebody can do that at work. It happens. So, so there are those kinds of jobs that are very managed. Academia sometimes is not like that because there's a group of people who look at your work and say, yes, you've met the criteria based on, again, supposedly objective criteria. So there's that. So there's a difference there in how your work is evaluated. And I always say your work is evaluated too publicly because if you don't publish, you didn't publish. You cannot be saying, I meant to publish. You know what I mean? So you have to have papers out there. You have to have things out there that show people that you are a scholar, right? So those are things. And to me, I feel like you see those open, objective ways of determining a person's progression and success is where I thrive best. All these things of somebody determining whether you did the work or not, or, based on how they feel or, what they think or the first ranking. My brain cannot handle it because it's like, how do you want to tell me I didn't do as well as person B, right? When I see person B every day sleeping on the job. So as an example, but then the person says, well, you don't know what person D did at the back. Why are we talking about something person D did at the back when we're all supposed to be here in the front room? You see what I mean? So things like that can be very tough for people. And I say that because it happens all the time where a person would look and say, I was listening to an interview the other day and the girl said after she had everything she had done, brought in millions of dollars in ad revenue, that her manager looked her in the face and said, you didn't perform as well as I wanted you this year, so no promotion, no bonus. It's like, I brought in the highest revenue in this organization and you're telling me no promotion, no bonus. So, things like that just make you almost like, it's unbelievable. That's the way I put it that way, right? In that sense. So academia can be a bit different because at least you have many people who can vouch and say, yes, you said write 6 papers. This person wrote 10. So they've met this criteria and I've exceeded it, right? People will always try to be funny and try to say things, but what is the criteria for promotion? Has the person met it or not? It should not be harder than that, in as much as people try to make it, way harder than it should be. Yeah.
So now let's shift to your book, the belonging paradox.
Yeah.
What motivates you to write this book?
So, the question of belonging, I think we just a little bit framed it when we talk about groups, intergroups and all that. The family system is a group in its own. It's a special type of group, right? in that sense. So I remember growing up, when we talk about me at the beginning, being a last child, and I remember thinking, my mom, she kind of has favorite children, right? That's kind of how you put it, out of the four of us. And I would say, when I grew up, no, no, my children cannot even have that issue. I'll be fair, objective. So then I grew up, I have my own children, and then one day out of the blues, my older son says, I wish that I didn't belong in this. I feel like I don't belong in this family. I'm like, what are you saying? He was like, yeah, because I feel like you like the younger one more than me and this and that. And I remember thinking, that cannot be true. But I was like, well, that's his reality. And he used that particular word. He said, I feel like I don't belong in this family. And I remember that's how I used to feel sometimes growing up. Not every day. I love my family. They love me. But I'm just saying, sometimes you just feel like, am I even a part of this family at all? You know what I mean? And being the youngest, there were a few instances because my mother was big on respect. So when she brings things, everybody would take before you. They will all do things before you. And you're thinking, when is my own turn going to come? So when he said that, I was like, wow, is there something that kind of fuels this, what you call belonging need, right? And how we look at belonging differently and all that. So there was that, because I'm that person too. I'm that person who, if I'm in a group, I want it to be obvious that I belong, right? I don't want to just be thinking it. I don't know if you understand what I mean. Like, sometimes some people are like, hey, I know I belong to that church. I'm like, I do, but I still need physical evidence. I still need that when I'm not there, people will say, hey, we haven't seen you in a while. I still need what you call pebbles. I need it. Just me as a person. I've always known this about myself. So it's like, is there something about it that makes it such that some people have a higher need for this than others? Because there's some people, let's say church now, they are very happy to just come to church, go home, come to church, go home. They don't even want to talk to anybody. They are just like, what? But for me, I'm like, if I'm in a church, there should be that communal T1, T1, you get what I'm saying? There should be that thing. So then I'm, kind of just almost like taking stock of the different areas of life and say, what are the things that actually make people feel like they belong or don't belong? What are those experiences? And for me, the pivotal moments where I had to grow, I would say grow, right? Through that sense of a lack of belonging, and recognize that, look, I have community, I have people around me, I have good things that are happening to me, irrespective of this, what I call negative belonging experiences. So that's what made me kind of say, you know what, I need to put this together and see if people can see themselves in some of these stories. And I gathered stories from different people to say, tell me about a time when you felt like you really belonged, when you felt like you didn't belong. What were the things? What did you learn from it? Because for me, it's about the learning. I'm not just writing stories, I'm teaching people too how to make people, feel like they belong. And I'll tell you a little story. When I went to Nigeria to do the book sign, I remember one of the guests there was like, this is an American thing, Jerry. Belonging is utopia, this, that. So I said, okay. So I said, do you remember when you first came to work? We kind of worked together. I said, yes. I said, imagine if you walked into that office and everybody there was speaking Igbo. And you walked in, he's Yoruba. And I said, and you walked in and you cannot speak Igbo, right? If you can speak Igbo, it's fine. I said, you walked into that office, nobody gave you the time of day, nothing. They just continue speaking their Igbo and laughing and laughing. How would you feel? And that's when he was like, he actually paused and he was like, oh, I said, that's what we're talking about. You people look at a title and you think, oh, this thing happens here in Nigeria as well, right? You go in a friend group, people don't even say hello or welcome. They will just continue whatever vernacular language they were speaking and all that and all that. Not mindful of the fact that you don't even come from their part of the country, right? Some of these things are the things that I said, if you sit in that room, after a while, you're going to get up and go.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I don't belong here.
Yeah.
You are not saying those words out, but that's what you are insinuating by getting up and leaving the room, because you're like, these people are speaking a different language from me, right? In that
Even you could, sorry to cut in, even you could be speaking the same language.
language,
They don't even
yes.
belong
I
because
use
you
the
are
word
not the same
language.
class.
Yes, exactly. I use the word language figuratively, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because language is what's the word? Is an artifact that is easily understood, right? If we are speaking the same language, we understand each other. It
Yeah.
could be a language of class. It could be a language of, township. It
Yeah.
could be a language of the same high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm using the word language both literally and figuratively, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that sense, that there's a way you enter a place, you realize they're not speaking my language. And
Mm-hmm.
then you're like, okay, how do we get to a shared understanding? That's the critical thing. It's not every time you have to step out. If you enter a room and you want to belong there, you have to find a way to make sure you can speak that language or they can speak some
Mm-hmm.
part of your language, right? There has to be a meeting ground.
Yeah.
And that's really what my book is all about. But that paradox is that you enter these spaces where people tell you on the outside you belong, and you enter there and they're speaking a different language from you, and they refuse to speak your language.
Acknowledge you.
Yes, exactly. So you're like, I enter this place, and all of you said to me that I belong, but you are not behaving. You're not behaving in a way that lets me know that I belong. So then what's the issue, right? So it's trying to decipher that. That's what my book really is about. And I look at it from the family, because sometimes that questioning can also come from your family foundation, right? If you didn't grow up in a place where you felt, loved and kind of, I would say,
Yeah.
appreciated, you enter places and you keep questioning. That's why people talk about inferiority complex and all that. It's a belonging thing, right? Because you're always questioning, do I belong here? Do I fit in? Do I not fit in? So what are the things that, from a family perspective, for those who are raising children now, how do we show our children that they belong no matter what? Now, when you become a person's friend, what are the things you do in friendship that, ensures friendship belonging? Then I talk about work, right? What are the things that we can do at work to make sure that people around us feel like they belong? I'm not talking about fitting in. I'm talking about belonging. Imagine you are working at a place, and I tell this story in the book, and you have a child and nobody even congratulates you. Like, nobody. It's like, I just literally went through a life, what do they call that? Qualifying event, right? For insurance purposes, they will say it's a life qualifying event, and people could not congratulate you. So these are things that are, like I say, unimaginable. Because in Nigeria, you see people trooping through your house, bringing food, doing things. You know what I mean? So you're just like, this
Even you
can
could
be
you could even put it in a potluck. You know how they
unfair.
potluck dinner,
Yeah,
whereby everybody brought different food from
yeah.
different group.
Yeah.
That's one thing they practice in America here. When you put your food down, they know that's your food. Nobody will touch.
Nobody touches it. Exactly. Exactly. Mrs. Ariki, you got it. Exactly. So these are the issues, right? You now start to say, oh, what is wrong? I don't know. Well, if you were with me on LinkedIn, I told a story last year. And that story, I don't want to say it went viral, but it got so many comments because people understood what I was saying. My son plays football. And so the parents of the freshmen football are supposed to provide lunch. So now many parents, they just pay. They pay a restaurant. They are like, deliver food, deliver food. But my son was like, Mom, can you make jollof rice? Because your jollof rice is banging, right? Teenager. I said, sure. How many kids? He said 100. I made rice for 100 children. I made chicken as well, like suya chicken, everything. So I take this into the place. The other parents who had paid for food, she paid for what do you call spaghetti, tortellini, all these things, Italian food, right? Because there were a lot of Italian kids on the team. So they put their food. I remember the woman was like, "Oh, put your food there." I'm like, "What?" This is what I'm telling you about when I say advocating for myself. I'm like, I brought lunch. I'm gonna put it where every other lunch is. I gathered that thing close to where everybody was, where all the other foods were. What did you make? Rice. Okay, Again, everybody trying to be polite. But then one of the coaches came and said, "What did you put in that rice?" That he smelled it in the chicken. That he smelled it. It was so good. He tasted it. He was like, "That is the best chicken I've ever had." I said, "Good." Because when I first came and I said jollof rice, he was like, "Oh, I guess you know what you're doing." That's what he said to me. He said,
Mm.
"I guess you know what you're doing." When he was like, I said, "It's rice. It's just rice." Like my kids call it red rice. He was like, "Okay, I guess you know what you're doing." So now this boy started to come in. Everyone will just see me walk past me, like you said. See me walk past me because I was also serving the food. One kid came in. Apparently he's Haitian. I knew this later because I met him later.
Yeah.
Came in. And he's a popular kid. He comes in. He's like, "What? Is that jollof rice?" He was like, he started to dance. I'm telling you, he was like, my God, I want more. I want this. I want, like, give me everything you have. He stacks his plates with rice, stacks his plates with chicken, goes to sit down. So I think when he sat down, some of these people tasted the rice. Miss Seriki, all the rice I brought finished. Finished, like not a grain of rice was left. And then all these women were like, did you put in that rice? Can we taste it? Because I put a little bit aside. They were like, oh my God, what did you call it again? I said jollof rice. She said, do you make this for parties? Because I think maybe I can start to expand my, my offerings at my parties. I said, I do. Here's my number. I gave it to her. So, these kids, they kept coming back for more, coming back. I'm telling you, one of the women said, what did you put in that rice? I said, if it's Nigeria, they'll say you put something in the rice. But guess what? The children tasted the rice.
Yeah.
They didn't just look at it and say, you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
But they tasted it because there was, what do you call that person, that first person, patient?
The person who is like an influencer.
Exactly. There was that influencer kid that came and tasted it. He already knew what jollof rice was. So he was like, what? I'm telling you, he was like, what? Nobody told him they were going to have jollof rice. That man, I should give him, I put all that rice, he came back for 2 helpings. And the way that rice finished, it was like Oliver, when you say, like, I was like, this is an Oliver Twist situation because can I have some more? They were like, that rice is good. That rice is good. And I'm thinking, this is how life works in this country. Like, you don't give people a chance, right? But you need just that one person. That one person to say, I believe in you. I know you can do this. And then they start to see your magic, right? In that sense. I use that jollof rice as a leadership story because the rice finished and all of them kept asking me till tomorrow. Those people see me and they're like, that woman can throw down. I said, but if you had looked at me just standing there with my rice and that kid had not been there, I'm not sure any child would have come to my rice bucket.
It is a shame in a diversified environment. So in your book, you talk about liminal space.
Yeah.
So those thresholds where you want to belong, but don't quite feel like we do. How do immigrants experience this paradox?
Yep, that is it. It is that, like, we came in, right, into America. I'll say that. America would tell you that it's a land built on immigrants. This is the story that they tell, right, all the time. You go to Staten Island, the Statue of Liberty says, bring me your masses, your hurdles, your suffering, and whatever. There's that idea, right, that this is a place where dreams are made. What's the American dream, right? There's that consistent narrative. But you come in and you realize that, the story is a little different, right? I literally have to almost like walk my way to the top. And as I'm working, this is what I want to say. I look around and many times, no matter what I do, I'm still surrounded by my own people. Not for lack of trying, right? So what is it? What is it about it that makes it such that you are here where you're supposed to belong, and yet there's still that, like, why do I look around and I don't have...
When you mean your own people, can you explain it further?
I mean, I'm still surrounded by a lot of Nigerians, a lot of Africans. Is that what you call homophily? It's not because I don't want to make friends with white people, but every time you try, you find that they don't bring you into their own community. You understand? You can do things on the surface, the work, all of that. But if you go to many of events of immigrants, you're not going to see many white people. It's not because they don't want to invite them, but you invite them, but they don't come, right? And vice versa. I mean, sometimes they don't even invite you to your things. It's from them that you learn you can work with a person for 20 years and not get invited to anything, right? Because they don't consider you a part of their circle. You understand? And you can't be upset about it. It's just their culture. So that's what I mean. So that's what I mean. Like, you are here in Nigeria. How can I be your worker for 20 years and not buy a Ashwebi for your child's wedding? Like, it's inconceivable. You understand what I'm saying? But here, it's like, well, we're not friends. Why should I invite you to my child's wedding? I'm just even using that as an example. Sometimes it's even their own weddings, right? In that sense. So there's all of those things that happen. And you're just like, wow, it's different here. Even in as much as they told me it wouldn't be, it's different. So how do I navigate that? How do I navigate that with a healthy sense of self, with a sense of assurance, right? Self-assurance, self-confidence. I think that's always what I want to say, because many times that's why when we were in graduate school, they will say, oh, if you're surrounded by just African persons, you are not being whatever. And I'm like, someone like me, I've gone out into these spaces. I've tried to be friends. I've tried to do everything. Yet it's almost like there's an invisible wall. And so I had to stop worrying about it. I literally had to say it's okay.
So how do we challenge the narrative that somebody else need to permit us to belong?
Yeah. Again, I tell people, it's like, let's go back to this, me and the PhD. I earned this PhD. If I'm in this room, it's because I'm supposed to be here. You cannot tell me that I don't belong here. You understand? Now, your actions may try to tell me that, but I'm going to not focus on your actions. I'm going to completely ignore the message that you are trying to send to me because I earned, I would say, the right to be here. Let me put it that way. I earned the right to be here. So that's that. I think that's a fundamental thing that I want to always tell every immigrant that comes in, to say, don't let anybody tell you don't belong here by action, by deed, or whatever. You understand? Not to say you're not going to feel the impact sometimes of the things that people do, because some people really do want to tell you don't belong. They'll tell you, go back to your country, do this, do that, those kinds of things. But remember what I was saying at the beginning, that's on them.
I believe many listeners who listen to this will find this helpful a lot, especially among us who are immigrants, because coming to this country, trying to survive from different culture, different background. We have some people who are immigrant that they have language barrier.
Yes.
Okay, so they look at you, they see you have to not just fight for yourself as an immigrant, even your children who were born here, who does not even have an accent.
Yep.
Marry looking at their name, they already being seen as an outsider.
Yeah.
So how do you personally define true belonging?
So there's something in the book that I talk about place belonging, right? There's place belonging and then there's state belonging. State belonging is that internal one, the one of, do I belong here? Do I feel like I belong here? But place belonging is geographic, right? So I say the way I belong in Nigeria, it's a different kind of belonging from what I have in the US. And I understand that, right? If I'm back home, I'm home. Nobody talks about anything about me, right? If you speak Pidgin, you speak Igbo, they just know this is a daughter of the land, right? The belonging I have here, like I said, is earned. And I know that is conditional. What do I mean by conditional? If I do something as a naturalized citizen, right, the Constitution still has a right to say to me, you have broken the terms of the agreement, and so we're going to send you back to your mother country, right? As an example, I'm just saying. So I understand that. So I'm going to stay on the right side of the law. I'm not just going to say, yeah, I belong here, so I can do whatever I want. And so for children who are born here, their place belonging is even higher than mine. And this is what I'm trying to teach people. Like, the fact that you were born here, right? You have even more, I don't want to say you have more rights than me, because you don't, but you have more, what's the word? Stake. You know what I mean? Because of your being born here in this land, in this geographical place. So your place belonging is higher than mine. So walk in it, walk high in it. You understand? For the children. This is what I try to tell them. I said, don't let anybody tell you don't belong. You must ask why. You must ask questions, because the person that asks questions doesn't get lost, right? In that sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And for many, I know you talk about those children who were born here. So as a parent and immigrant, how can you advise a parent helping their children feel a sense of belonging in a country that isn't their native land? Some of these children who were brought here at a very young age, but they grew up in this country.
Yes. So for that, if you are a parent of such a child, I would say don't cease to, what's the word? Keep them connected to the artifacts of the country that you, the parent, came from. Don't cease to do that. Because many times when I hear from these younger children, that's the thing they are missing. It's like, I'm neither here nor there. You understand? So like my children, we joke about it all the time, but I said, you're as Nigerian as they come, just because your mother was born in Nigeria. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. You understand? And then obviously I take them to Nigeria. So it's not just something they're hearing with their ears. Even though they will say, Mom, I'm American. I said, you are American, quite all right. But you see, underneath this skin, because I'm your mother, you are Nigerian.
Yeah.
You're Nigerian. So you have all the benefits, the intelligence, the everything that comes by virtue of you and me and your dad being in Nigeria. You have that in as much as you have the American side. So it's almost like bolstering, right? Their sense of
and the culture is there, because if he
yes.
says is an American, you are an American, but you also, even though you were born here, but you have the culture within the home.
Within the home.
You are growing up. Because
Exactly.
you
So
know
that
there's certain behavior
yes,
that is expected of you.
yeah,
It's certain food that you eat that belongs to your culture. There's
yes,
certain tradition that is practiced,
yep.
even though you were born in this country.
Yes, yes. And to me, I say, even when the children are saying, no, they don't want it, you just have to keep doing it because those are the things they will still come back to when they go out into the world and get their first sense of that. Wow, do I not belong here? Right? Because I feel like everyone goes through that kind of experiential thing of why did that person do that? Why was I treated differently? Okay, in that sense. Sometimes they get it and then they're like, oh, now I understand why I needed to be rooted in my Afrocentrism, right? That's kind of what people call it. Why I needed to be rooted. So for me, is that rootedness and not, reminding them about it. Because I tell my son, I'm like, yes, I know you are in this predominantly white school and all that, but you go and tell them my parents are Nigerian and
Yeah.
let them know what that means for you as a person. I don't want you to miss that. I want you to just continue to have that at the back of your mind that your parents are Nigerian. And I tell him, I said, and he laughs about this, like, Mom, I said, you see, all these your friends from East Asia, guess what? They don't identify as American. They have their own traditions, they have things, they have all this festival of lights, all these things that they do because they understand their heritage. So you don't lose yours, right? Because all these people here, they are holding on to the two based on
Yeah.
because of their parents. So don't mix it up. A lot of them, right, can
Uh,
almost like walk between the two worlds very well. They even speak the language. We don't speak because my husband and I don't even speak the same Nigerian language. So there's no common Igbo that we can speak at home. But if we did, that's what I would have taught them from when they were young.
Yeah. And you could also bring the culture to the school as well,
Yes, I do.
for
I
them to.
always go for their international student night and I introduce Nigeria to them. They don't let us bring food, so I don't. So that one we were required to make lunch. But I've introduced the country to them so many times just to let them know that, look, there's a country right on the other side of the Atlantic. I tell the kids, I'm like, we know we live in Jersey. I said, you see that same ocean, right? In Ocean City, Asbury Park, whatever. It's the same thing in Lagos. And they're like, huh? I said, it's the same Atlantic Ocean. Then I bring out the big map and I show them. And they're like, wow, can you get there in 2 days? I'm like, no, maybe it'll take you 3 weeks by ship,
But
but by air, you can get there in 10 hours. So
yeah.
just kind of teaching them about, I would say, the geography of the world, but in a fun way. Because I do believe that when people know better, they will do better. They may not do better by you, but that knowing to me helps them. It just helps shed more light. I call it that. Maybe because I'm a teacher. Like I always have that sense of when people know things, it changes them. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. Now I know, right? And once a person knows something, sometimes there's a pause between action and reaction. And that pause is good. Is good because now they're no longer doing things on autopilot, as it were.
And I could relate the same story with you regarding your children where they are in school. My
Mhm.
children are grown now.
Yeah.
When they were younger,
Yeah.
in school where thereby is only few blacks there.
Yes. Yes.
And I believe I have to bring my culture in.
Yep.
And I started traditional Yoruba storytelling,
Oh, wow. What
where
led to cancer?
no, Pansa Pansa
Okay.
is another
Okay.
story in
Okay.
itself, where I had to bring in the traditional storytelling. I remember when my daughter was in second grade
Yeah.
and I did traditional storytelling. And when I
Wow.
do those storytelling, I go to African market in New York
Yes.
City,
Yes.
count how many boys and girls in the class, buy
Yes.
African necklace, put it on their neck.
Oh,
And then the week I did the storytelling, a mother from Guatemala also contacted the class and said, I'm coming to do
I'm
story.
coming. Yes.
A mother from Israel also said, I'm coming to tell the story in the
Wonderful.
class. So you
Wonderful.
see the exchange
Yeah,
because
the exchange. Yes.
when we are raising children in this country, in Africa, in most of
Yeah.
our society, I don't want to generalize. Everybody almost share the same kind of culture in
Yeah.
sense, one way
Yeah.
or the other. But here we have to be involved,
Involved and deliberate.
deliberate
Involved
about
and
it.
deliberate
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
about it. Yeah.
And mind you, both of my children went to two different schools. So as
Mhm.
I do it in my daughter's school, I do the same thing in my son's school.
Mm.
So like you said, we have to be part of it.
Yeah.
Because to bring in the culture. Even you could be taking your children to Nigeria every year. If they don't feel the connection there,
Yes.
they
Yes.
won't claim it. They won't
Yes.
feel any sense of pride,
Yes. Yes.
towards that. So, and I'm so glad that you brought that up. So,
Yeah.
how do we help our children know that they belong, even when a society is sending them a different message?
Message. It starts from home, Mrs. Seriki. I'm telling you, it starts from home. I tell my children, you cannot belong anywhere more than you belong in this house, right? In that sense, like, no matter what you do, you are a fundamental part of this family. No matter, like, you come to us with everything. And also, when they then come, or I see, I'm like, I teach, right? I kind of try to get teaching moments out of things. So if something happens, I try to explain it to them. I even show them sometimes some things on the news to say, this could have gone this way, this could have gone that way. But sometimes this is the country we live in, right? In that sense. And so I just want you to be kind of aware that sometimes people don't even know. I don't want to say they don't know what they're doing, but they're so used to seeing people like you in a certain way. Now, when they see something different, it confounds them, right? So it's kind of like sometimes they try to, I talk about place a lot. They try to put you in your place. I say, your place is exactly where you want it to be, not where somebody has told you you need to be. You need to be very, very mindful of that, right? And that's why I talk to them about asking questions a lot. If somebody tells you something, you say, how do you know this? Why are you saying this? Like, you want to get to the root of something. I said, because people will tell you things and then you try to internalize it. No, but when you ask why and how, it lets the person know this kid is trying to find out more. And so there's something behind this. Either they're going to go home and tell their parents or something, right? And so the person kind of adjusts themselves as opposed to just telling you things and you two, you're just kind of taking it, right? Even among peers. So this is not just even with like older people, even among your peers, just always asking, why? How do you know this? What are your sources? Trying to let people know you're not just going to tell me something and I'll take it, right? Because that's then that same mindset you bring into a place. If somebody says your space is in the back, you say, why? Why is my space in the back? Why do you have only me in the back, right? You want to kind of nip things in the bud quickly. And then the person might say, oh, it was a mistake. Come forward. You're like, okay, I'm going to come forward. So next time you know that your space is in the back was just an automatic thing and you don't have to take it. You have to kind of ask questions. So I'll tell you, my son, the younger one, there was an ad going on TV and the thing said, do you need to learn how to say no? Something like that. And he goes, well, my mom doesn't need it because she says no to people who try to boss her around and tell her what to do. I was laughing. My mom does not need what you're selling.
You see, they watch.
They are watching you. Yeah. My mom does not need it because she knows how to say no properly to things that don't work for her.
Children will define you before you because they pay attention.
They pay
And
attention.
we set
They
example
do.
for them.
Yeah, they do. They do. Yeah. And I told him, I said, yes, you need to learn how to say no. If something is not going to work for you, say, no, thank you. No, thank you. No, but no thanks.
I know we've talked about it a little bit, but I want to gain your attention on this
Okay.
issue of intraracial
Yeah.
discrimination. Many African immigrants
Yeah.
quite overt biases, not just from white community, but
Mhm,
from other
mhm,
people of color. Have you
mhm,
encountered this during your
mhm.
journey?
Thankfully, I haven't, but I know it exists. I read about it all the time. Sometimes you're in this, like conversations online and the thing just devolves. It devolves to, yes, we knew Africans come to take our place. Africans will say, we know you guys are like that. And I'm like, what does this even mean, right? And I'm not saying this from let's kumbaya, let everybody be okay. Because again, I think what is happening from a group perspective is this perception of scarcity of resources, right? Like there's only so much to go around. And African people, we come in and honestly, we're coming in with a different perspective. And what is that perspective? The perspective of that, where I'm coming from, everyone looks like me. We're just all doing our thing, right? So I come in from here and I'm thinking, I'm just going to do my thing regardless of. You heard me, say what happened in grad school. Like if someone reads my book, they will not believe I went through all of that at work, but I did. So I come in from that perspective and I'm saying, yes, I can name this for what it is, but I'm not going to sit back. I feel like that's the thing and let you define me. I think that to me is the fundamental thing that I try to do and to say, like, I don't know why this person might be doing this, but I'm going to do what I can do. And so I think from that perspective, right, this is the thing that to me, I think is part of the central issue. Like, we didn't have to fight for as many things. Many of us come here, at least I came like a full-grown adult, already finished school, already this. So I had a very secure sense of self, and even that was still shaking, right? When you get into some situations, but I still had a sense of, oh, I'm my father's daughter. I know who my parents are. I know who I have I know my ancestors' village. That thing, we underestimate it sometimes, I think, from an African perspective, to know where you are from. I keep talking about place belonging. And to me, I think that is what sometimes, the African Americans was taken from them, right? Which is why Ancestry.com blew up, because people want to know where they're from. There's that longing for home in every single one of our souls, I feel. So Africans is like, we have that, and that helps bolster you. I talk about this a lot. It helps bolster you. You come in here, you are very focused, because many times you are working for people back home, right? When I mean working for people, you are working so that you can send money back home, help other people, do all these other things. People that were born here may not have all those things, to kind of worry about. So for them, it's sometimes amazing. When I talk about scarcity of resources, I just came in, I got my PhD, and now I'm in this job. Meanwhile, a person here probably didn't go to the best schools because of redlining and all this, having working their way through, maybe didn't go to college. Now they're working like almost like, what do you call them? Jobs, sometimes minimum wage jobs. So they can't understand it. It's like you came and you took their place. It's the same concept now we're still talking about in these immigrant stories. You are taking jobs from us. You are taking things from us. So I feel like anytime there's that conversation around scarcity of resources, there will be intergroup tension, because one person will feel like, I could have gotten this if not for you. I could have gotten this if not for you. And so there's always that back and forth. While we from Africa feel like, oh, we came here, it's easy for us. Why can you not just do the thing? But you forget that the schools, you forget that every day they're seeing this almost like signs of inequality, right, around them. And that can mess with your psyche over time. So I always say I'm very empathetic to both sides of the equation, and I know it's there. Again, part of this thing is us almost like getting to know each other, education, right? Learning about the different places. Now we're seeing many, almost like, I don't want to say a turnaround, but there's this thing of Ghana welcoming people, Togo, right? Saying, come back home. Come back. If your ancestry is from here, come, we'll welcome you. So I think I really like those ceremonies, all those kind of things, because I think it just gives people a sense of, we're all one, regardless of the fact that the initial slavery tore kingdoms apart, separated people across oceans, and now you have these divides. But I think just the concept that these people can come back home, I think many more of us need to be able to, like drive that story forward. I remember a friend, a girl that I met in church, and she was telling me, she said, oh, I got my ancestry, I'm 50% Nigerian. And I said, you're Nigerian, right? You're my sister. And then I got her outfits. You know what I mean? That like 53% is a lot of Nigerian in you. So claim it, that kind of thing. And we became friends from there. But it's not to say I'm going to now disregard her story. She has a story of someone being born here and raised here. She's 50 something now. So I have to be mindful of that too. I think it's just being mindful of everybody's, I would say, perspectives and seeing the value in it, and not saying one is infinitely better than the other or anything like that. To me, I would say a median place, right? And for all of us to understand that we're all battling the same system, if I will put it that way, right? The colonial systems that were put in place. We all face it. It's just different dimensions. I think for us, again, from immigrant perspective, is like, I came here, which is like, the land of opportunity for the people back home. If people could take my place, they would have taken it. So I know how fortunate I am. So I'm more focused. I'm more almost like tunnel vision. I want my children to do well because it's an ancestral kind of thing. So I'm not going to do certain things. I'm not going to go certain places. I'm going to focus and try to make money so I can, take care of my family and take not just my family here, take care of my family back in Africa, right? So there's a lot of familial responsibility on us that I think we are very mindful of, so we don't play around. Let me put it that way.
And what I will also say, even though there's scarcity of resources, even there's so many African American who, as gone through this struggle and they became who they are today.
Yeah.
Whether you
Yeah.
want to talk about in
Yeah.
science, which you
Yes.
too may have
Yes.
come across, whether you want to talk about in education, there's so many African
Yes.
Americans who had that rough beginning and they were,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put everybody in the
In the
same
same basket. Yeah.
basket who
Yeah.
were able that they are like the models that I look
Yeah.
up to and say, wow, if you could make it through
Mm-hmm.
this, I think I can also.
And that's important. This thing you're saying, I do it a lot, like modeling. You cannot be what you cannot see, right? Even if you are, then you turn around and make people see you so that they can see the things that are possible. They talk about the window, right? The reflections and mirrors, to say we want children to be exposed to this, positive role models. Like that's what they call it. That's why all this, like you said, stories of all these people who made it through. I always say everyone should be taught this because it lets you know what's possible, right? It lets you know what's possible, lets you know the greatness that you have on the inside of you, I think. We are talking about genetics, ancestrally, like people to survive slavery. That is genetic lottery, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think if people knew more about that side of it from a genetic point of view, want to rise up.
And
Yeah.
do what you have to do. And we
Mm-hmm.
can say, as a parent, you put a lot of effort in where you hope your children to be.
To
I've
go.
seen
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
African Americans, even though they might be educated on a sixth grade level, was able
Mm.
to raise a child who became a
Yeah.
doctor.
A PhD. Yep. Or doctor.
Not everything is about going to college or become
Mm-hmm.
a successful
Mm-hmm.
business
Mm-hmm.
owner.
Mm-hmm. I have this book right here. Oh, so the former first lady. This book.
Yes,
You
yes.
know.
I read that book, and there's so many African Americans that I read the
Yeah.
books like
Yeah.
that. Even when she went to Princeton as a
Mm-hmm.
college, the discrimination she experienced,
Yes.
even
Yes.
among the
Yep.
black people,
Yep.
who
Mm-hmm.
the upper echelon,
Yeah, even
who
in the
look
school.
at
Remember,
her,
the guidance counselor told her that Princeton is not for people like her.
yeah,
Literally.
who told that, and that didn't stop her to become
Yeah.
successful and be a lawyer. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of time, from where we come from,
Mm.
and you said it many times in this conversation, whereby it's not somebody stopping you, is to look at that person and say, you are not going to stop me from being where I'm going to be. We
Mhm.
even have a prayer towards that.
Mm.
Understand me?
Mhm.
We have music towards that,
Mhm.
whereby you get up in the morning and say, nobody's going to stop your way for you.
Mhm.
Nobody's going to stand in your way.
Yep.
Is to look at that. And then, because when we start understanding, everybody have that biases towards,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
already talked about it. You could be
Yeah.
within the same group. You have
Yeah.
biases. Every human being possessed,
As bias. Yeah.
even within the same family.
Yes. Yes.
Do we let that actually stop you,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
rise up to where you're
Yeah.
supposed to be? So we
Yeah.
have to be able to look at that and look at your field. You are in a field where it's mostly white.
Mhm.
Even as a professor, you're still thriving and
Mhm.
doing what you're supposed to do.
Mhm.
Imagine you looking at it that, oh, they said, white people are this, they are that. How would that affect your career?
I mean, that's what I write about in my book, How to Thrive, right? In spite of all these belonging paradoxes, what are the things you do? What are the practices, psychologically and otherwise, that can help you, hold your own, your sense of self, your sense of place belonging and state belonging?
So finally, I just want to ask you, how do you think we can then open the conversation across Africa, other
Mhm.
African immigrant, other minorities, because when we're talking about people of color, we focus mostly among people of African descent,
Yeah.
because you also have other people of
Mhm.
color who are from
Yeah.
Asia. Nobody is saying,
Yep.
they're not claiming, oh, they're taking African American space. You understand what I'm saying? Or the
Mhm.
white person who came from different European
Yeah.
countries are
Yeah.
not being accused of
Mhm.
taking space. Why is it person?
Because it's a skin color thing. It's now an external thing. Because if you know anything, the people from Asia, they are called white adjacents, right? Like if you're looking at the ladder, it'll be Caucasians, then the East Asians, and then the black people. Of obviously, even among the blacks, there's colorism, right? Like if you go to certain Latin American countries, the lighter you are, the more favored you are, the more higher on the hierarchy you are. So I think from that perspective, it's just that external attribution, what they looked at you to say. That's why. And then there's also the conversation. I don't know if you've heard this, that people from East Asia are like water, right? They claim people of color when they want to, when it's advantageous for them, and they claim, not people of color when it's advantageous for them, right? So I'm like, yeah, when you're in the middle, that's what you can do. You can go this way or this way. So there's that perspective. But I do think that from the bottom of it all, we've talked about it, intergroup dynamics. What are the things that we can do to make contact between these groups less divisive, less full of rancor, and more positive? And I always say it starts with us, one person to one person. We're talking about potlucks. Now, you may just decide 4 people, let's get together, let's share food. You know what I mean? It does not have to be the big office potluck. You just get people who are willing. Start to do that enough, it spreads. You remember what you said about what you did in your children's school is an example of positive contact. The minute that happened, see how it just spread, right? Because people saw, wow, this is the best way to show, not necessarily tell. What I mean, you can talk about Yoruba culture all you like, but doing that, involving the children, giving them an artifact, cultural artifact that everybody could see, those children will not forget it in a hurry. Yeah. I used to go to my children's school too all the time. And I remember one time I went, told a story, talked to them about different things and how women can wear different hats. And I took different hats and I was changing it. Years later, I'm talking years later, once a girl met me in the store and said, "You are the woman with the many hats." And I'm looking at her like, "Where do I know you from?" She said, "You came to my first grade class. Imagine. And you read us a story." I was like, wow. So that reminds me that some of these things we do, they are lasting, going and being with people. In my book, I talk about how the Afghans talk about entering people's stories, right? So you going and sitting with people, being, in their own community, sharing bread and food and all that is many times entering their story, and you invite them to enter yours as well. Not everybody will take your invitation, but that's kind of the way life is. The people that do, you bring them in and you treat them well, right? In that sense. So.
Oh my God, Dr. Iwuchukwu, you are so brilliant. Thank you. Thank you
Thank you
so
so much.
much.
Yeah.
In conclusion, Dr. Iwuchukwu, your journey
Yeah.
is not only a testament of
Yeah.
resilience, but also a powerful example of how science, identity, and belonging can coexist in a meaningful life.
Yes.
The challenges, the triumph, and the truth that so many of us hold quietly.
Yeah.
You've given us a tool to name our experiences and the language to reclaim our place
Yes.
wherever we find ourselves. Thank you so
Oh, I
much.
love it. Thank you so much, Mrs. Seriki. That is the work I wanted my book to do in the world. So every time I hear it, I'm telling you, it brings tears to my eyes, because so many people have said to me, you have given us words to describe, right? Many of the things that we went through and we did not know what was going on, right? And to me, I'm like, that's it. Once you have a word to describe something, it quietens down, right? Whatever it is, you know how you said the things we hold quietly, you are now like, okay, there's more of us out there, like you said, holding our truths quietly, working, to bring a sense of belonging to ourselves, our children, and the people around us. And that comes from us as Africans. We're a very communal people. And I feel like that's the thing I never want us to lose, no matter how much enmeshed we are in the Western systems, right? I talk about acculturation in the book. You can hold two things in a culture together and hold them and merge them, as opposed to losing your culture completely. No, no, no. No, no, because at some point you look back and say, that was a harsh exchange. That was a costly exchange that I did, right? And that's why I talk about our children, teaching them the culture and letting them, like you said, be immersed in it at home, because that will tide them when the time comes, when their belonging is being questioned. They will know, I do belong to a people who are communal. Yeah.
Thank you so much for those. For those of you who want to go deeper into this conversation, I highly recommend Dr. Iwachukwu's book, The Belonging Paradox. It's not just a reflection, it's a guide to recognize this place. The place is within us where we always belonged. Whether you are an immigrant, a parent, a leader, or someone navigating change, this book will meet you where you are. find it anywhere book are sold, is on Amazon. Review and leave a review in this incredible work. If you found today's conversation insightful, inspiring, eye-opening, be sure to subscribe and follow Pansa Pansa podcast on your channel. You listen to podcasts, leave us a rating and review, and share this episode with friends, especially someone navigating their journey of identity and belonging. Until next time, keep seeking stories that connect us, challenge us, and help us grow.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Panza Panza Live Podcast. We hope to have you back with us in the next episode as we continue to explore the nuances of the African immigrant experience. If you'd like to connect with us, you can email us at talk@pansapansa.org. That is talk@pansapansa.org. And follow us on Instagram at pansa.pansaforum. Until next time, remember to spread kindness and love. Thank you and take care of yourself.